Hi you guys, welcome, välkomna, добро пожаловать. My name is Salmansa Rogers. Today is Friday and I have another true crime stories with Sal for you. So I know a lot of people have been under the weather lately, so I hope you take care of your health. Today's case is another very sad, tragic case. Little quick disclaimer and a warning. I will be talking about sexual abuse and murder. So if that's something that you cannot listen to, especially the sexual abuse part, just click out of this video and take care of yourself, take care of your mental health. That's the most important thing. And I'm sure I will see you in another of my Friday videos. And also, quick disclaimer that I will, as always, keep the victim's identity private due to respect for the victim and the victim's loved ones. But you can always Google the case later on because I will be telling you guys the place and the year. It's easy, just to Google search and you will come upon this case. So without any further ado, let's get into today's case. So today's case starts in Holland, Michigan, here in the United States, and the year is 1979. So the early morning of February 1st, 1979, a snowmobile or snow machine, the ones that kind of clears out the roads for the people, when it's like been a huge snowstorm, basically clearing out the road for cars and what have you, people to be able to travel to work. So this machine was operating in the early morning just to clear out some snow for the residents when they later wake up and have to go to work or what have you. And once he was getting into this kind of like a little foresty area, he noticed freshly tire marks. So like someone just recently was here and just left. And he found that very odd because it was a pretty heavy and thick snowstorm earlier, a few hours earlier. And no one, like, why would you be out in such a hard condition? So he followed the tracks, and upon following the tracks, he stumbled upon a gruesome discovery. He discovered the naked body of a 22-year-old woman who I will call Lucy. Police was, of course, called in, and they taped out the area and started to investigate. The woman's body was identified, like I said, she was 22-year-old. Her name was Lucy, or I would call her Lucy for the sake of the story. Her parents were immediately called to identify the body, and when the parents arrived, sure enough, it was their daughter Lucy. Everyone was shocked upon this discovery, especially her parents. They couldn't believe this was happening. Lucy was a very, well-mannered. She was a very honorable student. She went to the community college in Holland, Michigan, and, she took her studies serious. She also had a work as a desk clerk at a place called Blue Mill Inn. It's kind of like a hotel motel type of place, and she worked as a desk clerk there. So, she had a job, she went to school, so her parents were just shocked to hear this and, of course, heartbroken. Police quickly started an investigation, so they started with Lucy's college friends. They started interviewing them. Then they start interviewing Lucy's co-workers at the Blue Mill Inn Hotel to see if they knew anything or if Lucy had any enemies or what have you. And upon interviewing the people, the co-workers and the residents or the hotel guests, as you would call them, they quickly found out that actually one of the hotel guests, who also was a security guard, that a night prior to Lucy's night prior to the man discovering Lucy's body, this security guard called in, and he claims that he was on the phone with a desk clerk who is Lucy, or who was Lucy. And when he was on the phone with her, he could hear in the background two men shouting at her, and he, immediately thought that he assumed that she was abducted by these two men. And when he showed up to the front desk, he discovered Lucy was gone, and they also took $500 from the register. So that was the only basically lead that police had. According to my research, I couldn't really find out if like the camera was not working at the hotel, or if they didn't have cameras back in 1979. I don't really know, but it was not much said, or the lead basically died out. So police had nothing to go on. They never found out who those two men were, who abducted Lucy, or were they the same men that eventually killed her. So unfortunately, that was their only lead to go on, and that lead died out. So Lucy's case would become a cold case for nearly 30 years. And this is 30 agonizing years for Lucy's parents. Lucy also had a younger brother, and of course Lucy's friends. The whole town was shook by this case. 2003, a college professor, a film college professor at actually the same college that Lucy attended in 1979, he came across this case of Lucy, and he became very intrigued that this happened in his town. He didn't know about it, and he became very intrigued, and he actually came to interview one of the detectives that worked on Lucy's case back in 1979. And the detective agreed. He's like, so basically the college professor approached this detective, and he told him that he has this idea to have his college students to do a film project about Lucy's case, to honor her memory, to keep her name alive, so people don't forget. And this detective felt like this was a great idea, because still to this day, or before he got retired, Lucy's picture was on the bulletin board in his office till the day he retired. He still, was so devastated and heartbroken that they still haven't solved this case. And this documentary became a huge success, not only in loving memory of Lucy, but also it actually sparked a renewed interest in this case. So the new cold case detectives on Lucy's case basically felt like, let's re-interview a couple people, and let's start with the man that called that night about Lucy being possibly abducted. And also, let's re-interview a close friend of Lucy. So let's start with this gentleman that so-called heard Lucy being abducted that fateful night in 1979. Who was this gentleman? Well, his name, I will call him Robert. So Robert was a security guard that also was housed in the Blue Mill Inn hotel that Lucy was working as a desk clerk. And upon finding Robert now, because again this was 30 years ago, so Robert now he lives together with his wife, and he has two children, a boy and a girl who is approximately in their 20s. And Robert lived a seemingly, successful life. He opened a beauty parlor together with his wife. They had a great business. The business was blooming. His children were also now in their 20s. They had their own career. So, other people's outside their family life looked amazing. But upon, interviewing Robert, the police discovered that he was drinking very heavily. And this was very peculiar or very odd to the investigators, because if you're living this, seemingly amazing life, you have kids, you have your wife, you have your business, everything is blooming. Why are you drinking on a regular? And they found out that he's actually been drinking this past 30 years. And the only conclusion that the detectives could come up with is that he was basically drinking to numb pain, or trying to forget something very horrific. Robert was sticking to his story. He was saying that, yeah, he can't really remember right now because it's been so long ago, but he was on the phone with Lucy that night and he overheard two men. He can't recall if he recognized the voices or not. But he was basically sticking to the story that Lucy was abducted and robbed. In another interview, so I did several interviews with Robert. In another interview, Robert confessed that him and Lucy had like sexual relationship. They sometimes like used to sneak out to a abandoned house and just hook up there, have sex or what have you. So they were not together, but they had like, casual sex now and then. So that was pretty much all that they could get out of Robert for those two times that they interviewed him. So they decided to interview again this woman that was claiming to be Lucy's best friend slash roommate slash boss at the Blue Mill Inn. And this lady I would call Lori. So Lori was, again, she was working with Lucy at the Blue Mill Inn hotel. She was the hotel manager at that point, so she was also Lucy's boss. And her and Lucy were roommates together. So they were pretty close and considered to be best friends. And now Lori she was working, I believe, as a nurse. She moved out of Michigan. I believe she lived in Pennsylvania. And, she established her own life for herself. She was married as well, and what have you. So upon interviewing Lori a little bit more in depth, she started talking about this life, or this, how basically the environment were at the Blue Mill Inn. So at that particular winter, so 1978/1979, it was a huge strike at a local business. And this strike was very chaotic. It was a lot of going on. So the business hired security guards. And these security guards were later housed. They got rooms at the Blue Mill Inn hotel, the same hotel as Lori and Lucy was working at. So, and these security guards, they were known as heavy party goers. So after work, they like to come and drink. They go to to bars, to local bars, or sometimes they drink in the hotel bar. So they were very, very outgoing party animals. That a great word to describe them. And according to Lori, her and Lucy was also engaging in these activities, these parties with these security men. And eventually these parties you guys can just guess, a lot of liquor going on. People are just wild and free. A lot of messiness, a lot of, stuff happening. So a lot of, according to Lori, her and Lucy were also sleeping around with a few of these security guards. A few of them were married, a few of them have girlfriends, but that they didn't care about that. They still hooked up with Lori and Lucy. And also, according to Lori, at one point she actually found Lucy in one of the hotel rooms where she was on the clock. She was supposed to work, but she was engaging in sexual activities in one of the rooms with one of the security guards and what have you. So the environment at the Blue Mill Inn, from outside, it looked like any other hotel, but once you get to know people that stayed there, that worked there, it was a very, very messy and, drama-filled environment. And another thing that I also wanted to talk about when it comes to Lucy, just a little bit of her background. So, Lucy was actually raised in a very religious family. So, it was her and her younger brother and her mom and dad. And they were religious Catholics. And, all of her life, Lucy was raised basically in the church. They went to church religiously every Sunday. They did like church activities and what have you. So Lucy was very, very sheltered, or not sheltered, but very, I don't know if that's the word, but, she was basically not even allowed to have sleepovers or go to her friends' sleepovers if her parents knew that the other parents at the sleepover had alcohol at home or were drinking alcohol. So they were pretty strict. Lucy, coming from this strict Christian family, now in her college years, and she kind of likes, lives by her own, and she has her roommate Lori, and they work at this, crazy environment where it's drinking, alcohol, partying, sex, drugs, what have you. And also during the day, Lucy attends her community college. So now she's more kind of like exposed to this more wild life, and not just this sheltered family home where it's like, forbidden to do a bunch of things. So Lucy started actually experimenting prior to her work at the Blue Mill Inn. She was actually involved with a much older, a middle-aged man when she her first community college years. And this older gentleman later on came forward, and he was regretting basically his decisions to take sexual advantage of Lucy because she was so, young, naive, and vulnerable, and he, regrets his decisions of taking advantage of her. So she was basically, this was her first sexual experience with this man, and she fell madly in love with him. And he was basically just using her for sex. And after that experience with this middle-aged man, Lucy kind of like, realized that, God would not punish her. She would not end up in hell just because she had some, casual sex with a random, or not random, but with some people, with a person that she's not going to marry. So just because she had sex before marriage, God is not going to punish her and send her to hell. So she kind of like realized that, and she became more free with her sexuality, basically. And then when she started working at the Blue Mill Inn with all of this crazy security guards that want to party. So yeah, basically now Lucy is free from her strict parents. She has her own decisions to make, and she can do whatever she wants. So this brings us back to the interview with Lori. And Lori also claimed that after a while, Lucy became more and more, engaged in frequently sexual activities with the security guard. And it was at one point that Lori came into the hotel, and it was a huge fight between one of the maids, cleaning ladies at the hotel, and Lucy, because apparently the cleaning lady accused Lucy of sleeping with her boyfriend. So it was a huge fight. They were very arguing. It was verbal abuse, and it was a huge commotion. And at this point, Lori just felt like she had enough, and she had to have a serious talk with Lucy about all of this that's been going on. Basically, was a lot of jealousy and he said, she said type of conflicts in that hotel. But that was pretty much all that the investigators could get out of Lori. So they moved on back to Robert again. So this time they tried a different tactic. So one of the detectives actually brought in a copy of the film roll of the student film that was made about Lucy's murder. And he said that he wanted to show Robert this documentary to maybe spark some memory or what have you. And Robert agreed to watch this film with the detective. After halfway through in this documentary, the detective can see that Robert is start like basically sobbing. He it was a one part in that documentary that he could not hold back his tears anymore, and he started just crying. And at this point, the detective knew that Robert most definitely know more than what he, tells. So he just stopped the movie and he told him that, hey, listen, I want you to be honest with us. If you know more than what you tell us, I want you to tell the truth because you have a daughter yourself. And can you just imagine if that was your daughter, if Lucy was your daughter? At this point, Robert started to confess everything that he knew about what happened to Lucy at that fateful night in February of 1979. From this point on, everything that I'm about to tell you guys is the basically Robert's confession. So that night, it was actually the same day that Lucy had that altercation with one of the maids, one of the cleaning lady about the boyfriend. That was the same shift. That was the same day. And according to Robert, yes, there was partying. Yes, there were, wild parties or what have you, and a lot of jealousy was going on. And for some reason, a lot of the workers at the hotel and the security guards were starting to kind of like despise Lucy, even though everyone was engaged in the same activities and no one was exclusive. It was just like, free to do whatever you want, but still they had a lot of hatred towards Lucy for some reason. And they conducted this plan together. So it was Robert, it was Lori, Lucy's so-called best friend. It was a few other people, but a main guy that I'm gonna mention, his name was Arthur, or is Arthur, and he was basically kind of like the main security guard. He was, excuse me, he was not housed at the hotel. He had his own little private house outside, like a few minute drive up outside the town. But he was also sexually involved with Lucy and Lori. And later on, according to Lori, she was actually jealous that she found out that he had slept with Lucy because Lori, the best friend, was kind of like, liking Arthur, and she thought that they had something going on. But then when she found out that Lucy also slept with him, she became very jealous. So again, a lot of jealousy, a lot of he said, she said, a lot of hate. So basically, Robert, Lori, and Arthur conducted this plan to throw a surprise party for Lucy to basically lure her to Arthur's private house and basically humiliate her, sexually humiliate her, and teach her a lesson. Arthur and another security guard walked in to the hotel where that evening where Lucy was working, and they basically told her that they are throwing a surprise party in her honor at Arthur's house. And she was excited. She believed them, and she said, "Oh yeah, and let's go." So they also told her that they have to blindfold her and kind of like, because it's a surprise party, and she was willing to do so. So they blindfolded her and they put her in the back seat of their car. I don't know exactly whose car it was, and they drove away. And then while they were driving away, they told Robert to call in and act like he was on the phone with Lucy and that he heard these two men abduct Lucy and then steal some money. And they also, by the way, took that $500 just to kind of stage this robbery slash abduction. Once they arrived at Arthur's private house, they stripped Lucy naked, and at this point she realized that this is not a surprise party at all, or not that type of surprise party that she thought it was. They tied her to bed. They also put duct tape around her eyes and her mouth. They bound her wrist, and the party began. So basically, Um, According to my research, I don't know exactly how many, but it was 6 people that was basically uh, involved in the rape and the torture of Lucy. And while all of this was happening, Lori was also attended at that party. It was other people, by the way, from the hotel, workers and what have you, that also attended. So total of 25 plus people at this party witnessing this horrific torture and rape going on. But 6 people were the main people that were later arrested and prosecuted. But Lori was there, and she was basically shouting at Lucy profanity, calling her the B word, and you deserve this. This is what happens to sluts or what have you. So at one point, one of the 6 men actually tied a belt. He took off his own belt. He tied the belt around Lucy's neck, and while he was raping her, he was pulling the belt tighter and tighter. So eventually, they basically strangled her to death. So Lucy's cause of death when they found her body that early morning was actually strangulation. So as soon as someone shouted like, I think she's dead. So as soon as people figured out she was dead, everyone just became everything became chaotic. Everyone became panicking and starting to clean up or what have you. And another thing that I also want to point out, Arthur, during this whole 24-hour torture and rape, he was actually taking photos of this horrific event, not just to have the photos as a sadistic memory, but also to kind of like photograph the people that was participating, or at not maybe participating, but were at that event, just to kind of blackmail them later on. If they were going to the police, he would say that I have pictures that you were there, and if you tell on me, then basically you'll be arrested and prosecuted as well. So basically have these kind of photos of that event as a blackmail photos. After they cleaned up, Robert and Arthur and another security guard, they took Lucy's naked, lifeless body, put it in the trunk of their car, and they drove 40 miles out of the location. So 40 miles away from the hotel and from where they were at. And basically dumped her body in that snow pile that later was discovered, a few hours later was discovered by the man in the snow truck. So after hearing this confession from Robert, the police were shocked that Lori, the so-called best friend, was even involved in such heinous crime. And they quickly, of course, arrested Lori together with Arthur. And so basically total of 6 people was arrested and prosecuted. Arthur, the ringleader, he got life sentenced, and he actually recently passed away. I think it was 2018. He passed away in prison. I don't know, I forgot the year, but it was recently. The other people, they got sentenced to life for second-degree murder. Robert and Lori, since they were cooperating with the police and kind of like, witnessed, they were kind of like the witness, and they were testifying against the other men. They got second-degree murder charges, and they got, I believe, 25 to 50 years. And I know that Lori, she actually but recently got released for good behavior. So she got paroled in 2016. While the rest of the men are still in prison. Like I said, Arthur passed away. I believe one other guy also passed away in prison. And a lot of lives were, of course, shooken, and a lot of people was heartbroken when Robert's wife and his 2 children found out that what their dad did. They were just horrified. They couldn't believe that their dad was a part of such a heinous group of people that could do such a disgusting thing to a human being. Same goes with Lori and her family now. And I don't know if she had children. I believe she might have, but but when they found out the truth about their mother or the people the coworkers of Lori, they were just disgusted. And for what? Honestly, for why? Like this was such a stupid and you know, very tragic situation. Of course, poor Lucy and her family, and that she lost her life because of some stupid, jealous people. Basically, thanks to these college students that did, and this college professor that had this great idea to do this college film about Lucy's case, that basically helped the detectives eventually solve Lucy's case and bring the people, you know, the perpetrators, and bring some closure and justice to Lucy's family. Yeah, I mean, again, you know, my heart goes out to Lucy's family and brother and mother and father, her friends, her loved ones. So sorry for the loss, and I'm very, very happy that they finally, even though, of course, they cannot bring Lucy back, but at least they had closure and they found out what really happened to her. I wish it was sooner, but you know, everything karma, you know, karma knows, karma always gets those that, you know, deserves it. What can we take from this case? You know, it's just, again, like, make good decisions. Don't fall for peer pressure or, like, you know, um, like I said, this was just act of jealousy from Lori's part, and then Arthur, who I don't even understand why he was jealous. It's not like he was Lucy's boyfriend, and you know, whatever she was doing, it's like he was doing the same thing too. So, but just act of jealousy could turn into such a rage. Make good choices and don't fall for peer pressure, because it can not only ruin your life, but also ruin, you know, the family, your family members, your loved ones. And you know, no one deserves to die at all. No one deserves to be murdered or tortured. Like, you're not God, you're not the universe, you're not karma. Let karma take care of whoever you think deserves karma, you know. Just think twice before you act upon, if you're jealous or whatever, hate. Just think twice of the decisions that you make, because they could be very crucial and life changing, not just for you, but for people around you and the loved ones that you have. So that was it, my darlings, for today's case. I hope you guys, I'm excited to see what you guys think of this case, if you have heard of it, if you recognize it. And again, if you leaving comments, make sure they are nice comments. Just think twice. If this was your loved one, you wouldn't want anyone write some bullshit about them. So just think twice and always leave nice comments. Or if you don't have nice comments, don't leave nothing at all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, of course, and share this video. You know, if you know someone that are interested in true crime and you feel like this video is worth sharing, please do so. And for all of my new subscribers, welcome. I hope you guys enjoy, or welcome to this true crime family of ours. Hope you enjoy my videos. I release videos every Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you have future cases, I always recommend to leave a comment below if you have future cases. And with that being said, take care of yourself, love yourself, stay safe, and I hope to see you guys next Friday. Ciao, cacao.